subscribe. And hello, everyone. Welcome to Haunting Live podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in on this beautiful day. It's been a great weekend here so far. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend wherever you guys are, including the time change that we had this weekend. So days will be getting longer, which is great. But thank you guys so much for following us over on social media, on our Facebook page, where we keep posting everything for you guys. Also on our Instagram. We're on Instagram and Twitter as well. So don't forget to follow us over there. And of course, you can listen to us on the podcast apps later on, like Spotify, iTunes, and so on. So we're pretty much on all the podcast apps. But today we are trying something a little bit different here for the podcast. We have Chris joining us here live on.
Hey everyone, we do hope you enjoy this episode today. We do actually have a great guest though that's going to be on just in a bit.
Yeah, we do have a guest booked in here today. He's waiting here for us, and we'll bring him on in just a moment. His name is Shawn Leonard, host of Spirit Talker on APTN show. So we're looking forward to having him on and talking to him about what he does as a medium and other things he does in his life regarding the paranormal. So with that, let's actually just bring him right on and see how he's doing. Hi, Shawn. How are you?
I'm really well. How about you, Chris? And I'm Trevor, good. Right?
Yes.
Chris and Trevor.
Yes. Well, I'm doing quite fine.
Done it backwards, right?
Yeah.
You're Trevor and you're Chris.
Yeah, Trevor and Chris. Normally it's just Trevor hosting, but today we have two here today, so it is a bit confusing. But thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on Haunting Live podcast. We really appreciate you being here as our guest this week.
Well, again, thank you for having me on as a guest. And so what would you like to talk about?
First of all, let's discuss how you got into the field. Like way back in the beginning, what drew you into becoming a medium?
Well, I think we're all born psychic. I think we're all connected to spirit. We're all spirit having a human experience. I think it started for me. I believe that there's a path for all of us in life. And I feel this path for myself has been kind of unfolding since I was a little boy, and it's just continuing to unfold even today. And it's been an amazing experience, an amazing adventure, and I'm still learning. I don't know everything as it unfolds in my life. As I invite spirit into my life all the time, I still like to have new experiences and learn from those experiences and share them to the best of my ability when I do learn. But when I was young, just a young boy, I was always had people around me. The main person that I had around me was this friend that I had. His name was Sam, and I used to play with him and talk to him, and he was like my best buddy. And I probably around 4 years old, maybe close to 5. He said, "Shawn, I'm going to have to go, but I'm always going to be with you, but you're not going to be able to hear or see me anymore." And he was like a 6 foot something, curly, dirty blonde hair, blue-eyed fellow with wearing a long white robe. And I always would tell my mom about what Sam says, and she'd get mad at me about what Sam said and did and all this, which made for great arguments between me and my mom. But after he said, I have to go, this huge white light opened, and he just kind of walked into it and was gone. And I cried. I remember crying for like a whole day, like, where did my best friend go? Like, I couldn't understand this concept where he just would disappear or leave me, and I felt alone. And I would say he's my first friend, probably still my very good friend in spirit. As I believe now, he is my spiritual guide. I didn't know that at the time. And I think a lot of people, when you're young, I bet you there's a lot of people out there that have imaginary friends. It's not just me, myself, and maybe some people remember them leaving, or maybe some people don't, but I believe that we played with somebody, there's somebody with us, working with us, guiding us through life, since we're a little child. And as I grew, I didn't understand, being a young boy, you learn as you go, right? But living and non-living, physical to non-physical. And I think the first loss that I've ever experienced was my great-grandparents, of course, being so old and such like this, right? And after they passed, I would often see them in my room. I would actually often hear them in my room, and they would be there talking to each other. And I couldn't really make out what they were saying. They were kind of whispering all the time, but I knew it was them. And I did feel frightened, but also I felt comfort in the sense that they were there. And I told my mom, I said, Nan and Pop are here visiting me in the room. And she says, well, that's good. That's just because they love you. And I thought, okay, this is awesome. My great grandparents are here, but it happened so often. I kind of grew tired of it. And it was around 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd wake up and I could see them, the silhouettes of them in the room. I couldn't really make out their full features, but I could tell it was them from memory. And again, they were talking. And after some time, I just felt like, why are they with me? Why are they continuing to speak and talk in my room? And then as I was thinking this as a young boy, I would always pretend I was asleep too, because I didn't want them to know I was listening to them. And I remember them walking around my room close to me, and then somebody ran their fingers through my hair. And I was like startled because I didn't know that they could actually touch me, because I thought they were just in my room talking and loving me from the other side of the room. I didn't know they could actually physically touch my hair. And so I was praying at that point. I said, please let it be mom, please let it be mom. And I pulled down my sheets, and my mom wasn't in the room and my door was shut. And I didn't see them, mind you, but I know I did a backflip off my bed. I was in my mom's room, and I said, Mom, I don't care if they love me. They got to go, because they can't, she ran her fingers through my hair. I was like panicked. And she says, well, again, they just love you. And I said, well, that's great. She says, well, just tell them to go. Just tell them that you're not comfortable with them being around you. And I'm like, okay. I never ever thought about that. So I spoke to them. I spoke to my grandparents, my great grandparents out loud. I said, Nan and Pop, I love you, but you're scaring me. I don't want you to visit me in this way anymore. And that was it. I've actually seen or felt them again in that form in my entire life. Even up till today, I've not had that connection again with them. And I actually feel like, a lot of times, and there's different levels of energy, right? There's absolutely different levels of energy. And I learned this at a young boy as well, because I knew there was people that were coming with love and light, and they were visiting, and you can call, and whether they're your ancestors, like your great grandparents, or a mom or dad or uncle or whoever that is spending or visiting you, right? At one point, I remember there was a little boy down the hill, and his name was David. And he was a bit of a friend too. This is about 7 or 8 now. And I used to go play with him, but he was always sick, so I wasn't always allowed to play with him. And I think he had leukemia from my recollection. But, and I'd always ask my mom, can I go down and play with David? And she goes, well, no, he's not doing so well today. You shouldn't go down. And then I heard David had passed away. And one of the things I could do at will when I was a young boy was I could travel around my neighborhood. I could go to sleep, and I could actually step out of my body, and I could go anywhere where I wanted in my neighborhood. And I could actually fly sometimes, which was the coolest thing. And I could I wouldn't go too far, because I didn't really know where I was. So I would just fly typically above the telephone poles. And as I got older and older, I then couldn't fly as much. I was more earthbound. I was more grounded to the earth. And I remember running down my hill in Elmsdale, Nova Scotia, where I grew up, and flapping my arms, hoping I was going to get some, get lifted up into the air. And after David had passed, I said, well, Mom, because my grandparents used to visit me, I told Mom, I said, Mom, I'm going to go down and look for him in his house. And she said, I don't know how you're going to do that, but you go ahead. So sure enough, one night after he passed, I fell asleep, and I walked down the hill. I didn't fly, and I went into his home, which seemed vacant, which was so odd, because I know his parents still lived there, and they had furniture, and I was expecting, because David had now transitioned from this physical form to spirit, I thought I was going to find him. So I looked through the whole house for David, and I couldn't find him anywhere. I went downstairs, I went in every closet, I went everywhere through the house, and nowhere could I find David. And then I came back home, I woke up, and I told my mom, I said, Mom, David isn't there. And she goes, well, that's because he's moved on into the light, or he's moved on to heaven. That would be her word, as she was raised Catholic, right? And I didn't understand this concept. Where is this space or place that was higher energy vibration that some people call heaven, some people call the other side, or some people call, the angel realm, whatever it may be. I mean, there's a higher level energy that I wasn't able to kind of at will go to. But yet I was in a place in spirit form outside of my physical body, walking around my neighborhood myself, right? And so we're all spirit having a human experience. So when I was young, I could at will leave my body into the astral world, which is a lower level energy than the higher level of energy, the other side. And I explored that for a long time. And that's when I first realized there was levels of energy. Some I could easily connect to, and some I couldn't. And I remember one night walking out or leaving my body again when I was a young boy, and I would go out into my yard, and it was just out of my driveway. And I looked up, and there's this woman who I swear looked like Mary Poppins, but she had like an umbrella and an old period dress style of dress on, and she was floating above the telephone poles. And I said, excuse me, because she's the first person I've seen here in, like, I've never seen anyone else in this place. So I tried to talk to her, and she wouldn't even speak to me. She just snubbed her nose at me and kept on flying. And I was like, this is so strange, but she felt like she was from a different time. Now today, as I grow older and mature in my life, I realized that she was probably more earthbound. And there was not a lot of spirits that were earthbound. In my neighborhood, she was just one of those, but there might be several others because I didn't venture far from my home. But then I knew there was definitely a level of energy, and those people in that level of energy, there is no time. So when they had passed or when they had transitioned, however they appeared in that time, they lose a sense of like how the world is changing around them. But I was able to perceive the spirit in that space and place. And she, I've never seen her again, and I wish I would actually. But and as I grew older, that was just when I was young, and I was already learning about levels of energy, and I wasn't doing it like, I wasn't reading books. There was nothing on the internet. There was no internet. I was like, we didn't even really have a library. I had a bus that was called the Bookmobile that would come up to the hill once a month, and I could get whatever books. And there was really nothing on ghosts or spirits or anything. But I was always looking because as I experienced these things, I was intrigued about what was happening, what was around me, what was this? And there was really no information back then for me to find. And then as I grew older in life and I had many different spiritual experiences, the first next big thing that would have happened to me was my dad passed away. And I was 15 years old. It was October 17th, 1987. And I remember my mom abruptly waking me up saying, Shawn, wake up. There's something wrong with your father. He's out in the driveway. Go help him. I'm going to call 911. So I wake up. I'm in my underwear. It's October. It's cold at that time. And I go out to look for my father in the driveway, but I couldn't find him. I was so puzzled. I was half asleep, mind you, and probably in shock about what my mom had just told me. But I ran back in the house and I said, Mom, I don't know where Dad is. I see his truck out there. It's running. The door's open. And my dad was in the Navy, and he used to get up at 5 a.m. to go to work. And so anyway, she says, just go out and check. She's on the phone calling people. I go out again, still couldn't see my father. And I said, Mom, he's not there. He must have got up and left. So she physically grabs me, takes me out there, points me at my dad, and then I could see him. And I don't know why. I don't think I was meant to find him. Maybe it was shock that I wasn't, maybe it wasn't because I've never really experienced physical death in that way before. I wasn't mentally prepared to see something like this. And to me, it was like blank. It was invisible. It was just not able for me to see. Or spirit made it so that I couldn't do anything to change the circumstances. Because I feel like we all have a purpose in life. We have a time to be here, a time to go home. We have a journey through life that we all meant to take. But I wasn't meant to change that journey for my father. And many minutes had gone by, and then when I did see my dad, he was face down. I rolled him over, and I started performing CPR. And I knew a little bit about CPR because I was a Boy Scout. Went through Beavers, Cubs, and Scouts, and they taught us CPR. We took a class on St. John's Ambulance, and here you never think that you're ever going to have to use this in any way for anyone. And here I'm doing this with my dad. And after probably like, it seemed like an eternity of trying to resuscitate my father, I could feel he wasn't there. Like I could feel his body was just a shell. It was just empty. There was no aura. There was no vibration. There was no spirit. There was nobody in this form. And then I started speaking to him. I started speaking aloud. I said, Dad, I could feel like he was there somewhere, but not in his body. And I cursed at my dad. I swore at my dad. I said, Dad, if you can hear me, get back in here. Get back. I know you can hear me. Get back in. And then I prayed to God. I said, God, please, loud, please help my dad. Bring his spirit back to his body. And then I felt it was hopeless. I just felt this sense of like, my dad is not coming back. And it was really hard. It was really hard. I failed my high school grade. I dropped out for the rest of the year. I actually failed the next 2 grades actually, because it was just like so hard on me. And it was a year after my dad passed, pretty much almost close to the date. And I was sleeping downstairs on my basement couch, or in my mom's rec room. And the reason why, and now I'm 16 years old, mind you, I've grown my hair quite long. I play guitar now. So I used to sleep downstairs mostly because I could sneak out of the room downstairs and come back later, and my mom would know I was gone. But, even though my mom was struggling, I was still trying to live my life. And I started, I won't say getting in trouble, but I used to do some, today, marijuana is legal, but back in the day, marijuana wasn't so legal. And I would be out smoking weed with my friends. I don't smoke weed anymore, and I have nothing against it because it is medicine. But when I was young, I would do that. So I had slipped out of the room and came back probably 1 or so o'clock in the morning, went to sleep. And again, 3 o'clock in the morning, I had the experience that I had when I was a child. I stepped out of my body and I was in the astral plane again. I was in the astral world. And even though I was in this plane, I could look across my rec room. I could see my body sleeping on the couch. And I looked across the room and there was this like enormous white light. And it was like the brightest, whitest light I've ever seen. It reminds me of the light when I saw Sam when he left me as a young boy. And this light got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then as it grew larger enough, just large enough for a person to walk out of this light walked my father. And my dad was like glowing. He had this light behind him. He was wearing a long white robe. And he looked good. He looked healthy. He looked younger, because my dad liked to have a few beers and he smoked and he didn't eat so good sometimes, hence dying of a heart attack in the driveway. And as I saw him, I was like, the first thing I thought is, oh my God, Dad, what the hell are you wearing? Because, you don't expect your dad to, my dad was a hunter, he was like a man's man. Like why are you wearing a white robe? And then it quickly, it switched to anger, because I was angry with my father. I said, Dad, and I didn't even have to say anything. He knew what was thinking. He says, Shawn, calm down. I said, okay. Because I'm only here for a short time and I have to tell you a few things. He says, I have to tell you that everything happens for a reason. And it was my time to go. And there was nothing you could have ever done to change that. He said, me and you had this plan before both of us were born, that I would leave your life at this point. I said, why would we make such a silly plan? Like, why would we do this? Like, why would we plan that you would leave my life? He says, because in order for you to become the person that you're meant to be, I can't be part of it. And I couldn't understand it. He goes, and I'm also the one that was meant to show you the light again. And I'm like, okay. And as soon as he talked about it, this light that was behind him, all I could think about, and when I saw it, I knew it was home. I knew this is where we come from. This is our true home. This world, it was like now the Matrix to me. It was like something I could have discarded in a second, in a wastebasket, and left, because I had no care about my body, my mom, my brother. I would have left everything in that day in a blink of an eye. And he said, Shawn, you can't go here. I'm like, why? He goes, because if you come here, you're not going to want to come back. I'm like, Dad, I'll come back. I'll come back. He says, no, you won't. I said, I'll just go for a visit. I'll come right back. He's, no, you can't go here. If you come here, you will not want to leave. Trust me, you have to stay here. It's part of your plan. It's part of your life. The reason why you're here is to being here. I'm like, okay. I said, I'll just go for a second. He said, no. He says, I need to tell you a couple other things. Make sure you tell your mom I'm okay. Make sure you tell your brother I'm okay. I'm like, I will. And he says, remember, the greatest gift of love I could ever give you was to leave my life so that you could become the person that you are. And never forget that. I'm like, okay. And then he touched me in the head and I woke up on the couch. And I was like, what? And I woke up and I was speechless. And I was kind of excited too, because, I saw my dad and he looked good. And so I went back to sleep and I woke up in the morning and I told my mom, I said, Mom, I saw Dad last night. He came to me in this dream and he came out of this enormous white light. He was wearing the long white robe and he wanted me to make sure I tell you that he's okay. And I thought my mom would be happy, right? But she was really pissed off because she said, what the hell did he come to visit you and not me for? I'm like, I don't know, Mom. But it seemed like he needed to connect to me. And I didn't know about what he meant, like that his leaving my life and what it was meant to entail and him showing me the light, having that experience. And he also said I'd be helping people one day. And I had no clue about how the hell that was all supposed to unfold. I said, how am I supposed to help people? He says, really, you don't really have to do anything. It's just going to happen. I'm like, okay, whatever. It sounded like gibberish. It sounded like Yoda telling you something on Star Wars and you think it's just like gibberish and just it means something later, right? And so anyway, I went about my life, moved out to Calgary, Alberta. I met a person, had a couple of beautiful 2 daughter children who were over my shoulder here, Mackenzie and Sienna. And then things started to unfold in my life in a way that I became very sensitive. Emotionally, but also sensitive to people's energy. I felt things about people. I knew things about people that I shouldn't know. I didn't purposefully walk into somewhere going, I wonder what they're thinking. I wonder what they're doing in their life. It would just come to me. I'm like, oh my God. And so I started to then tell my ex-wife now, who still lives in Calgary. I live in Nova Scotia, Canada right now. And so I would tell her, I would go to her workplace. She worked at Montana's Cookhouse. And I used to go visit her mostly because I was getting free food. But I would go there and visit her, and then I would just sit there and vibe people out. Like, oh my God, this person, that person that she worked with. And so we were done and we were driving home, and I'm telling her, I'm like, well, that guy's a drug dealer, right? That guy's stealing money. I can feel he's stealing money from Montana's, and that guy and girl, I saw them look at each other. I know they're cheating together, and they're married to different people, right? And she goes, no, you're crazy. You're absolutely freaking crazy. I know those people. They're good people. They don't look at each other. I see them all the time. That guy is married. His dad's a minister, for God's sakes. He's not stealing money, and that guy's not dealing drugs. And I said, and she goes, what made you think about this with these people? I'm like, I just don't know. It's just a vibe. And I just brushed it off anyway, because I didn't really seriously think that I might be right. I was just it was kind of fun. So I told her, and she got angry. And then within a week, maybe a week and a half, she caught the couple kissing in the kitchen. The guy got fired for stealing money, and the guy was busted for drugs. And then she come home and she goes, how did you know that? I'm like, I didn't really know it. It just came to me. She goes, well, and then she went to her work and she started to talk to people about what I had said. And she worked with another person, a great, incredible, nice person who's also an author out in the world. Jen Syme was her name. I changed it in my own book, and I even changed the restaurant. I said it was Tim Hortons, but because I had to do that to protect people in the book, right? But anyhow, she wanted to come visit me, and they all thought, okay, I might be psychic. And I didn't know this, but they had planned that I would have dinner with Jen on Sunday, and then I would read her, and then I would just whatever. So, Friday night, my ex is saying, hey, just want you to know Jen's coming over on Sunday. You're going to be doing reading for her. I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm doing a reading for Jen? She goes, yeah, I just want you to vibe out. Just do what you did at the restaurant. She's pretty open. I mean, just see what happens. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, but nothing's going to happen because I'm really not a psychic or anything like that. And she goes, just do it. Just do it. So I was like, okay, well, this is like, what have you got to lose? So she comes over and we have dinner, and after, I'm connecting to her, and I'm telling her some vague things that I think are vague. I said, oh, Jen, I said, I think you're going to write a book, and I think you're going to meet some guy named Dale, and that you're going to be like traveling around the world, going to different places and things like this, and maybe looking after the homes and such like this. And I said, and then I connected to her. Like, I thought, she goes, is my grandmom around? And I'm like, well, your grandmom, and I'd say different things. I don't know exactly what I said. And she's, but there's someone else I want to talk to. I'm like, well, I mean, this is all I got. I mean, I don't know anything else. And then something popped into my head. And just to give you kind of like and you could call it clairvoyance. I didn't know what clairvoyance was. I didn't even have the words or the vocabulary to describe what was happening. But I saw an image in my mind very quickly just pop into my head. And I saw a man wearing a baseball uniform. He had a number on his shirt. And I saw a shed, and he had took a baseball in his hand. He was bouncing up and down in his hand. He looked at me, walked into a shed, and then the door shut. I'm like, wow, what the heck is that? And I actually was like so skeptical of what I had saw that I wasn't even going to say it at all. So I said, Jen, I don't know what this is, but you know what? I mean, this is just for fun anyway, but do you know a guy that used to play baseball? She goes, that's the person I'm here to connect to. I said, he was bouncing. I'm just going to tell you what I saw with this, but he was wearing a baseball uniform. He had a number on, bouncing the baseball, and he walked into a shed and the door shut. And I saw tears coming down her face. She goes, that was my best friend growing up in high school. And one night after a baseball game, he went home and he killed himself in that shed. And I've always wanted to know if he's okay. I've always wanted to know if he made it to where he needed to be. And at that point, I didn't even know I could really answer that question. I just said, I mean, if I'm hearing him, I'm seeing him, I'm seeing things, he must be fine. That's all I could really come up with. But I shocked myself because I haven't gone for training. I haven't gone to learn anything. I've had experiences my whole life, but I never thought, I was even kind of sketchy if this was even all real at first, because I was even like thinking, is this just like some weird thing that I made up growing up, right? And but that shifted my whole perception. I thought maybe there's some truth to this. And then I decided to, and she told the person, and they told two people. And next thing you know, I've got people coming to me, and I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I just trusted. And then things started to kind of like come to me more. I started to see things, I hear things, I would know things. It would just flow to me, and it was like very profound. And then I thought about what my dad said. I mean, this is crazy. Like, what the hell? And I thought, well, maybe this is what my dad meant. And he said it would just happen. I didn't have to search for it. It would just like come to me. And, ever since that day and that time, I mean, I feel like I could say it's like there's so many sequences of events. There's not just one. There's one experience that may give you the confidence to step into the realm of unknown or trying to understand spirit or things like that. But there's been numerous little things through my whole life that have brought me to where I am today, and the understanding that I have and the knowledge that I've learned and gained. And it's sent me out into this like incredible adventure of learning who we are as a spirit, and then reconnecting to the different levels of energy, whether it's the physical world realm, the astral world, to the other side and the light, and being able to understand the difference between where levels of energy and spirit go. And I've done like paranormal investigations myself, and I was part of a paranormal group way back in the day. And I learned more, and more things happened, and it's been a great journey.
Well, that was an amazing story, and thank you so much for sharing it. I really appreciate all the detail and all the experiences that you went through just growing up with all your, I'm assuming, spirit guides that you had, and assuming they still follow you today, that they had some influence on you on what you do today. When you were growing up within the Native community itself, was there, how was the reception to you developing your abilities with them? Was it received really well when you were in the
Well,
community?
well, I am Mi'kmaq, but I never, like, I went to school with the Mi'kmaq guys, like, because I went to school in Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia. And it was probably a mix between Mi'kmaq people and Caucasian people and other ethnicities. But I never actually grew up on the reserve. I never did. My mom was Mi'kmaq, came from Newfoundland. Even my grandmom, when she was born, there was no reserves in Newfoundland. You know, she was born prior to even Newfoundland even being part of Canada. And there was like different Mi'kmaq communities, but there was no reserves. And my grandmom moved off reserve, married a Caucasian fellow, had 16 children, my mom being the oldest, and you know, grew up in a small fishing community in Newfoundland. And my mom moved to Nova Scotia, married my dad, who was Métis, you know, from out west. And then my dad never lived in an Indigenous community, nor have I. But I didn't even was even really connected to my culture, and because my mom didn't have her culture, my grandmom didn't have her culture. I remember even when my grandmom, before she passed, she had unfortunately dementia. But I would be trying to teach my grandma Mi'kmaq, and I don't know that much Mi'kmaq. I do my best, but I'm still learning. And she, you know, she would hear certain words and remember, but not very much. And which was so sad, because that there was a disconnect. You know, probably in the last 150 years with the Mi'kmaq people, and losing their language, losing their culture, and being disconnected from their community. And so I never actually grew up on the reserve, although I went to school with all the, you know, some Mi'kmaq guys, and who I was friends with, and who I'm still friends with today. But you know, when I was 19 years old, I left Nova Scotia and moved to Calgary, Alberta. That's where I met my partner, and even then I didn't live on a reserve. So the community that I was connected to, I've been disconnected from for most of my life. So when I came back home, and I did transfer back home, as I worked as a mail carrier for some time, and I always kind of joked that I deliver paper messages by day and spirit messages by night. But I became reconnected to my people, and I wanted to connect more and learn more about my Indigenous culture and connection, because I'd already started. I never received training from anybody. I received training from Spirit. Spirit's been teaching me the language of Spirit, I call it. Hence, I have a book called The Language of Spirit. But I think I've been learning this language my whole life, and but I've been now incorporating my culture with the language of Spirit, and I feel they kind of marry really well together, because the culture, Indigenous culture, that is something I'm proud of and something I'm happy to be connected with. And since joining my now, because I don't have nothing against Christianity. I do believe there was a man that lived 2,000 years ago. I'm sure healed people and did miracles. I mean, there's freaking people doing it today. There's definitely, if they can do it today, they can do it back then. And there's great teachers even today. But, you know, I don't lean to that type of faith system anymore. I lean more to my culture for my spiritual connection. First, through different ceremonies and things like that, and I don't teach ceremony in anything that I do, and I honor the ceremonies that I attend when I'm there, because that's why I'm there, to connect the Spirit in through those ceremonies, whether it's a sweat, a pipe ceremony, a talking circle, whatever it may be. It's part of who I am, but it doesn't. I'm not psychic because of all those things. But the more I learn about my culture and who I am as an Indigenous person, I learn more about how the Indigenous people have been connected to spirit, and it's part of their culture. You know, whether it is a pipe ceremony or whatever. I mean, we're talking to the creator, we're talking to the ancestors, to the grandfathers, the grandmothers. We're talking to spirit all the time. We're inviting spirit to be part of our life in their ceremonies. And I feel, to me, being the person I am and that I've become, because spirit intended this through me to come into the world. And now that I learned about my culture, it's something that I'm really very proud of, and I'm happy that I finally am able to learn a lot about who I am as an Indigenous person, not just as a spirit, in having a human experience. But as I moved back home to Nova Scotia, the Indigenous community, like I said, I didn't have too many connections to people. I spoke to spirit. I didn't even know how to smudge like 8-9 years ago. I didn't know how to smudge myself. I didn't know what a smudging ceremony was or properly how it was done. But a ghost, or actually was a spirit who was earthbound, who was an Indigenous man, taught me. And it was on McNabb's Island in Nova Scotia that I was doing a paranormal investigation. And when I went to this island, I went there because I was learning these levels of spirit. I went to help these two earthbound spirits to see if I could help them move into the light. And I made a connection. We were in this like tunnel under the ground that there's no sound, wind, nothing, no outside noises. And I was trying to help these two men who wouldn't talk to me. And then this big ball of white light floated down from the ceiling and then shoved me really hard. And I could feel his hand push me. And he said something to me in Mi'kmaq. And I know very, very little, but I knew that he spoke to me in Mi'kmaq. And then the whole room that I was in filled with the scent of burning sweetgrass. And it smelled like sweetgrass and sage and the whole 9 yards. And it was like you could feel the energy of the spirit going through the room in a circular motion. And then he came up behind me and pushed me really hard again. And I felt like his grip of his hand even. He'd come up and he spoke to me right in my ear and said something in Mi'kmaq. And then he went right through the ceiling again. And the two spirits that I was trying to help, gone. It's like, what the heck just happened here? And that was the moment that made me realize that spirit was guiding me to my culture again in connection to spirit. So I prayed about it. I said, Creator, my guides, my ancestors, please send me someone that I can connect to who's going to teach me or help me learn about who I am as an Indigenous person. Help me learn the smudge that spirit used to clear those earthbound spirits into the light. And so I did a charity event here in Nova Scotia. And the charity event was for the Beath House at that time. They had asked me to come to do a charity event. They would sell tickets, and the money went to this to the Beath House, which was it's a place for children that could be housed when there's like issues with the family where they can't be with the family, or to facilitate somebody who has a court order against them that has to have visitation rights with their children, but they have to be supervised. So I thought it was a good place to volunteer some time and do a group session. And I read a lady in the front row, and her name was Kathy Martin, and I didn't know who she was, honest to God. And because I just go, and they sold the tickets, and I came and I did my thing, and I read her, and I talked to her about, when I connected to her. I know she came there to connect to her son, but what came through was about 4 Indigenous people from up in Cape Breton that were murdered and disappeared. And that came through, and they showed me where they were and told me what happened to them. And I said, they're connected to somebody named Joe. And she goes, I met Joe yesterday, and he told me this story. I said, well, tell Joe if he wants to know where his grandparents are and his great aunt and uncle. I know where they are, because I've never found their remains. So that was it. I mean, because I barely remember my sessions typically, because they come in my mind, they come through me, and I do my thing. But that one kind of stuck out because you don't really connect to spirit where they tell you a story about 4 missing and murdered Aboriginal people. And this has happened maybe like 70 years ago, like a long time ago. So I went about my merry old life, and months had gone by, and Kathy calls me because she says, I have somebody that wants to meet you. I'm like, okay. And so this elder comes to my house and he knocks on my door. He goes, I heard you want to learn about smudging. I'm like, yeah, I'd really like to learn about my culture. I would like to learn about smudging because I'm here to teach you. My name's Joe. I'm like, oh, hi, Joe. And he came in and he showed me like, a smudging ceremony, talked to me about the medicines, talked to me about the 4 directions. He was giving me indigenous teachings. And then, much later, which is a long story down the road, but he eventually ended up giving me an eagle wing and gifted it to me. That was his, that was passed down to him from someone else. And so this is when I just trusted spirit. Because even though with indigenous culture, I wanted to learn, I asked spirit to send the right person to me. I asked spirit to send me a person that helped me learn. And he was the first stepping block in that journey, like probably 9 years ago or so. And it's just been unfolding then. I've met many, many elders and many people since then. And I feel because of who I am and what I've been doing, because I do it with like kindness, love, compassion, and I'm out there serving people to the best of my ability in many ways, that I feel welcomed by my community. I feel that my community is proud of me. And I feel they encourage me. Do I feel like some of them are skeptical? Freaking sure I am right there. But you know what? When they meet me and I say something or I connect to something that no one could possibly know, that all fades away. Then they know that I'm like legitimately authentic. It's not, you can't fake it. It's real. And that's how I feel now. I just feel welcomed by my community, and I'm grateful for spirit for sending me that first elder and many other elders that have come into my life since then, of all the different things that I've learned or the ceremonies I've been part of, and I'm still learning. I would never ever say that I'm like any type of like indigenous expert by any means. I'm probably going to be learning my whole life.
Yeah, I think we're all learning our whole life. I think it's our whole path that we have to walk down, our guides and elders and everybody in our communities, not just your community, but like our community as well. That, everybody that we meet on our path is guiding us in some way. Let's skip topics here a little bit and start talking about your show just before we let you go. But thank you again so much for joining us here. It's been amazing having you tell your stories and share your wisdom with us here today. How did your show come about? Just quickly describe how it came to be.
Well, that's funny. Well, I do the show Spirit Talker for APTN, and way back in the day, I thought about doing a TV show, but I really didn't put too much thought into it. Really, honest to God, I did not. I didn't think that much about it. As I grew in recognition of who I am as a spirit talker and a psychic medium here in Nova Scotia, I had the opportunity to work with another medium from Boston, Massachusetts, who is named John Holland. And so John we had set up a tour together where he came to Nova Scotia, and we went to Nova Scotia and New Brunswick where we toured together. And so normally I would probably, like, maybe back in the day before I met John, I was like 180, 190 people would come see me at a show. But when John came, 600 people came. And one of those people that came was named Donna Gabriel. And she saw me at the show and she went back and talked to her boss, who works for a company called Telltale Productions, and said, you should meet this guy, Shawn Leonard. And I think he might be great for a show. And but I didn't know she had said this. She never spoke to me about it. She never called me. And she talked to this guy named Ed Pyle from the owner of Telltale Productions. So the tie-in here, which is kind of cool, is they were filming a show here in Nova Scotia called The Curse of Oak Island. And I had a friend who worked with the Union of Actors. And I called her, and her name was Jessica. And I said, Jessica, I'd really like to go out to Oak Island and meet some of those people out there. Is there any way you could like tell me who I could speak to? because I would just love to get out there and just like vibe out or whatever and stuff like this. And she goes, well, I know there's an Ed Pyle that is co-producing the show with Prometheus, which is an American company. She goes, I have his number. Just hold on. I'll give it to you. You give him a call and see if you can go to Oak Island. He might be able to get you out there. I'm like, okay, cool. So I hang up with her. I call and I said, and Ed picks up. He goes, who are you? I'm like, I'm Shawn Leonard. He said, who are you? I'm like, I'm Shawn Leonard. He goes, this is the craziest, weirdest thing. Donna Gabriel came into my office yesterday and was telling me I should call you. Did she call you and tell you to call me? I'm like, no, I'm actually calling you for something totally different. He goes, you should, I'm calling you to see if I can go to Oak Island. He goes, well, I'm pretty sure I can get you out there. He goes, do you ever think about doing a TV show? I'm like, well, I did, but not really, that hard. And I said, I do have an idea. And he goes, what's your idea? I said, I have always wanted to do a show about searching for missing and murdered Aboriginal people. And I said, I've actually worked with the Halifax police on different cases here in Nova Scotia. Maybe I would like to do a show with different, whether it's the RCMP or local police departments across the country where I would be working with them in some sense. And I said, it would be really good to show what's being done and not being done. And I'll give them information. Hopefully that will lead them to like solving or giving more information to a case. I wouldn't be able to name people on TV because if I do, that's slander and I could get myself in big trouble. He goes, yeah, there's a gray area there. I said, yeah, but I think it'd be really good. At least I'm going out there, giving information, and then whether they act on it or not, we can even show that part of the show. And I thought that would be a great idea. He goes, you know what, I'm going to call APTN. I think they would be ideal to host a show like that. And I'll see if they're interested. And so he called them and they said, no, we actually have another show called Missing. And your show would conflict with that one. And there's a gray area there about naming people on TV about stuff. And he said, we're really nervous about that. Do you do anything else? I said, well, I do live shows. And he goes, yeah, Donna told me about your live show with John Holland. She said you were really good. I said, well, I do live shows and I read people in an audience format. And I said, maybe you could record one of my live shows and, we could go from there. He goes, that's a great idea. We'll actually record one of your shows. We'll set one up. Is there a community, like an Indigenous community, like a Mi'kmaq community nearby that you would like to go to? I said, let's go to Listowitch, Quebec, because I was just going to go up there anyway. And he goes, well, we'll set it up that you go up there, and then what we'll do is you read people in the audience. We'll pick a couple of people from the show. You do a personal session with them, and then we'll take little snippets and we'll send it to APTN and see if they like it. So APTN said, well, we'll fund that pilot. And so that's what happened. I went to Listowitch, Quebec, and a Mi'kmaq First Nation community. I did live readings. I did probably like 13 to 15 different readings in a live format. They picked 2 of them. They filmed, the one-on-one sessions, and they filmed the live show, and they sent it off to APTN, and they said, APTN said, we want the show. And they funded 13 episodes. And that's how the first season of Spirit Talker came out. And I just finished in November, season 2. Yes.
For your show, sir, for interrupting. How are people actually selected to be actually for the second portion besides the crowd?
Well, because I do live readings, what I do is I come to a community and people show up to the community. And when they come into the show, I do my show and read them live. And nobody knows who's going to be read or nothing like that. I don't know who's sitting where or nothing like that. It's just, I'm reading them. These are people from the community. And you can speak to the whole community if they collaborated with anybody in any way. They have not. And so I read them. And then the production company at the show goes, well, they pick a top 3. We like these 3 readings the most because of the story content of what you said or that shocking aha thing that you said to that person. And so we're going to call them and see, if they would come back for one-on-one sessions. So that's what the production company does. They pick their top 3. I do not pick their top 3. They do. And then they come and sit with me, and then I read them further on a one-on-one session to further the information that came through at the live show for that person, to see if there's like more information that will come forward in some way. And as the show premises on TV, they take snippets from the live show, they take snippets from the in-person session, and very small little portion actually gets put on TV because the show, I film my live show is 2 hours long. And then you only pick 3 readings and only 2 get highlighted on the show. Because out of those 3 one-on-one readings I do, they only pick 2 of them. They want to hedge their bets in case one's terrible. But I mean, they're all good in my opinion, but they just want to make sure that they pick their 2 favorite, right? And that's what happens. And this year, because COVID-19, unfortunately, there was no way to do a live show. So I went to 13 Indigenous communities in the Atlantic provinces, again, except Newfoundland. And the community members had an opportunity to put their name in for a draw. So they contacted the production company, and people at the production company then would draw from a hat the name, so it would be random. And then they would call that person and then have them show up to meet me. And when they show up to meet me, it would be when they sit in front of me, is the first time I've met them ever. So I would sit there and read them. And for this season, I did 4 sessions, 4-hour-long sessions. And they usually only highlight 1.5 to 2 for the show. But that's TV world, right? So they get a lot of extra material, but only put on a little bit of it actually on TV.
No, that sounds great. We were both wondering that ourselves, how that process is done behind the scenes. So thank you for letting us know how that process worked. Just before we let you go here today, do you have anything coming up that you're working on that you want to promote? Maybe talk about your book a little bit or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, my book, The Language of Spirit, you can go to my website, Shawn-Leonard.com, and there's a link to Amazon or Indigo chapters on there. So whatever site you wish to purchase from, you can buy it there. I'm going to write a new book. I do have an online course called Spirit Talker Tribe, where I actually help people develop their intuitive psychic abilities through a whole year course. And this year, I got a year 1, year 2, and a year 3 level of people. And this year, I have 650 students or something like this. So it's awesome. I get to connect and help people learn about developing and growing as a spirit themselves, so they can make spirit connections. Because instead of coming to someone, feel like they need to come to me, that they can connect to themselves. They can connect to spirit, and they can explore spirit themselves, rather than going to someone to have some type of proof given to them that they experience this connection to spirit themselves, which is firsthand. And I think if we all become more connected to spirit and walk in our life that way, you're going to change your own life, rather than feeling like you have to go to someone to. I mean, it's great that you come to me for a live show or that I read some people sometimes, but I feel it's always best that you have a personal connection to spirit, instead of thinking that you just have to go to someone else to get that connection to spirit. That you can speak to spirit, that you can meditate, that you can have experiences, that you can be clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, claircognate, clairambient, all of the clairs, that you can experience these too if you're open to it. You invite spirit, that you're part of it, but also knowing how to deal with the different levels of energy, especially with knowing the difference between, a lower level energy spirit that is more earthbound, or somebody is coming from the light, and helping people distinguish that difference and being able to communicate in a way, or even, when you run into an earthbound spirit, help them. They're people. They're lost. I mean, there's physical people lost in life. I mean, there's some spirits out there lost too. Help them and give them the tools so that they can help them, hopefully transition them into the light as well.
No, that sounds wonderful. Sounds like you have a lot of things lined up for later on coming down the road. So sounds wonderful for you. And again, thank you so much, Shawn, for taking time out, joining us here today on Haunting Live. Also, Chris is here with us, and me, Trevor, for being here today on Haunting Live podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. And watch Spirit Talker Season 2 and AP10 coming out in the fall.
Yes, we're definitely looking forward to the show. We're big fans of the show ourselves, and we'll be watching for sure. So again, thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. All right, that was Shawn Leonard, everybody, and we want to thank him again for joining us here on Haunting Live podcast. Amazing guest, and wonderful to have him share his stories about how he grew up and became medium and some of his experiences that he shared with us, especially on the Native community side. So we appreciate that so much. It was wonderful having him as a guest, and we're just going to talk a little bit here before we let everybody go here today. We have a few announcements here at Haunting Live Podcast, as always. Well, first of all, you notice there's a bit of a difference. Chris is here today, helping host the show. Usually he's on the chat side of things, so we want to try something a little bit different today. Chris and I are both fans of our guest today, and we want to both be the host and asking questions together rather than just one person doing it. So if you guys like this type of format, let us know. We can do this in the future again for something different and keep things fresh. Just let us know how you found the double host of the show this week. Otherwise, on our website, we have revamped our whole entire merch section page. If you don't know, besides the podcast, we do sell merchandise. Anything to do with the paranormal field, we usually sell. We have things for cleansing, we have crystals, we have handmade crafted items that Chris makes, including bags, crystal trees, and earrings and jewelry as well now. So you can check that out too on our website. With that, guys, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you guys following on social media. As always, we encourage you to try to share our work a little bit more and try to get our names out there for us. We appreciate that. And we'll continue to post more posts on our Facebook and social media for you guys as well. But don't forget, one last mention, the crystal sale is going on our website right now. If you need any crystals, anything for cleansings, anything like that, we do have some special items on sale right now at half off. So that's up until next Saturday. So check it out on our webpage under merch. But from Chris and I, thank you guys for tuning in and happy hauntings.
Did you hear that?
Thanks for watching. And of course, subscribe.